Princess of Wales pledged herself to serve her country and her people, and to maintain the precious principles of constitutional government which lie at the heart of our nation.
The pen had barely left King Charles's hand when the palace understood that something irreversible had happened. Without ceremony, warning, or public consultation, the monarch signed an emergency decree naming Catherine the new keeper of the seals. It was not an honorary title. It placed the Princess of Wales in control of the instruments used to authenticate the crown's most guarded decisions, and left those gathered around the king wondering whose failure had made such a drastic transfer necessary. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles read the final page inside the audience room, paused over Catherine's name, and signed. He set the pen beside the decree instead of returning it to the waiting official, making one truth impossible to ignore. This was personal. The keeper of the seals was the person trusted to protect the sovereign's private seals, confidential warrants, succession instructions, and sealed family orders. The tools proving that a royal command carried the monarch's authority. By signing, the king transferred that custody and the sealed authorization register to Catherine, with effect from that hour. William found her moments later in a corridor. She first assumed he meant a ceremonial responsibility. Then he explained the decree's reach, and her expression changed. The honor carried danger because whoever controlled those seals could confirm, reject, or expose the crown's most guarded instructions. William felt pride, yet fear moved beneath it. His wife now stood at the center of a conflict he did not understand, and the future king knew such trust would make her powerful to some, and threatening to others. Catherine asked to see the order before accepting anything. A sealed annex, meaning a confidential attachment kept separate from the main decree, named the security breach that had forced Charles to act. She alone could read it. Even officials were refused access. That restriction showed how deeply the danger had entered the household. Camila learned the truth differently. An equerry entered her office and requested the return of a key traditionally held within her household. The queen consort did not argue. She stared at him, then lowered her eyes toward the key, as though she already understood what its removal implied. When Catherine finally stood before Charles, she did not thank him or reach for the seal case. She asked only, "What happened to make this necessary?" His silence made the answer feel darker than the decree itself. But to understand why Catherine was chosen, the palace first had to confront what every person in that room stood to gain, or lose, from the king's decision. For Catherine, the decree was not a triumph. It was a burden delivered without applause. For William, it was proof that his father trusted the future queen more than many who had served beside him for decades. And for Camilla, it was something far more painful. A royal responsibility had been removed from the orbit of the king's wife and placed into the hands of the woman who would one day inherit her place. Catherine entered the private room carrying none of the excitement others expected. She had built her influence through restraint, discretion, and the ability to remain calm when family tension threatened public duty. The unopened seal case rested between her and Charles. A seal case was the secured container holding the instruments used to confirm that a royal command was genuine. She folded her hands and told the king she would accept only after he explained why the usual custody system had failed. Charles felt relief, but it came with shame. Her refusal to celebrate proved he had chosen wisely, yet her seriousness exposed how dangerous the situation had become. William felt the same division. As a son, he worried that his father had acted under pressure. As the future king, he understood that the seals could never become weapons in personal rivalries. He trusted Catherine, but he feared what that trust would now demand from her. Camilla received the decision as a judgment disguised as procedure. She knew the decree did not remove her title, yet it moved royal confidence away from her household and toward the woman who would one day stand where she stood. The queen consort asked herself whether Charles had saved the monarchy by quietly reducing her place within it. He sensed her hurt, but he could not undo the decision without weakening the very protection he had created. Sophie had known more than anyone realized. In a documented private memorandum given to Charles before the signing, she listed earlier moments when Catherine had protected confidential matters without seeking advantage. The trusted confidant had watched her refuse shortcuts, resist pressure, and place duty above family comfort. William then discovered that 3 possible custodians had been considered. A confidential security review removed 2 names, leaving Catherine as the only choice able to command trust across the present reign, and the one still to come. She did not accept that praise easily. Instead, she asked to see the record that had disqualified the others. The decree may have been signed in a single minute, but its true beginning lay in one private ceremony where a sealed command appeared in the wrong hands. 3 weeks before the emergency decree, a private investiture at Windsor should have passed without controversy. Instead, one sealed authorization arrived bearing the correct royal emblem but carrying instructions Charles had never approved. The document was stopped before it could be acted upon, yet the discovery shook the household more deeply than any public scandal. Someone had either misused the sovereign's seal or allowed access to the tools capable of reproducing royal authority. Sophie noticed the danger before anyone else. A private investiture was a closed ceremony in which honors or royal distinctions were formally presented, and every instruction had to follow a verified order. The paper before her demanded a sudden change in precedence, meaning the official ranking that decides who stands, enters, or is acknowledged first. The seal looked correct, but the wording did not sound like Charles. She stopped the proceedings and carried the document straight to him. Charles read it once, then again. His face hardened. He ordered every aide to leave except Sophie, placed one hand over the disputed paper, and said, "This did not come from me." The king knew royal authorizations were checked through restricted registers, controlled seal impressions, custody logs, and signatures known only to a small circle. Those safeguards mattered because one false command could create confusion inside the family while appearing completely lawful. Sophie felt loyalty pulling against fear. The custody record linked the packet to an office connected with Camilla's household, though it did not prove the queen consort had touched it. The trusted confidant showed Charles the earlier irregularities: missing register entries, sealed packets returned late, and one custody box that vanished during a household transfer before quietly reappearing. He resisted the implication and defended his wife, insisting that poor administration could not become a personal accusation. Then Sophie opened a second register. It showed the seal case had been accessed 17 minutes after the monarch's genuine authorization was complete. That unexplained opening destroyed the idea of a harmless mistake. Normal safeguards had failed. Catherine's name entered the room through Sophie's documented account of an earlier family dispute. The princess had refused to act on an unsigned instruction, even though obeying it would have benefited William. Her caution had seemed severe then. Now it looked like proof. She had protected the future king by refusing an easy advantage, and that restraint now gave Charles an answer to the crisis. Charles ordered a private inquiry. Before it could finish, Camila learned her offices were being searched and demanded an explanation. When Camila entered the king's private room and saw the disputed seal record on his desk, the argument stopped being institutional and became painfully personal. Camila did not ask whether a mistake had occurred. She asked whether Charles believed she had betrayed him. The question struck harder than any formal accusation because it forced the king to choose between the woman beside him and the evidence before him. With no aides present and the disputed register lying between them, years of loyalty, sacrifice, resentment, and whispered palace suspicion were compressed into one unbearable conversation. Charles had arranged the meeting before any official questioning could begin. He refused to let investigators confront his wife without hearing her first, and part of him still believed she could clear the shadow hanging over her household. The restricted custody register was the protected record showing who opened, moved, or accessed sealed royal materials. When Camila saw it on the table, she understood this was no routine review. Charles asked why a key assigned to her office had been used after the authorized packet was sealed. Camilla pushed her chair backwards and stood. She demanded to know whether he truly believed she had ordered the false instruction. The queen consort felt decades of loyalty collapsing beneath one access entry, and she insisted that being close to the breach did not make her responsible for it. Charles did not accuse her. That made the moment worse. He admitted he did not know who had acted, but he could no longer let personal trust replace secure procedure. As sovereign, he had to separate marriage from duty. As her husband, he knew those words would cut deeply. Camilla heard only one truth. When the crown felt threatened, affection no longer protected her. Then she revealed what had happened. In a private recorded conversation with a senior household secretary, she had been told that Charles urgently wanted an old sealed precedence file retrieved. A precedence file was a confidential record governing the formal ranking and order of royal figures. Trusting the request, she had lent the office key. Charles went still. He had issued no such instruction. The verbal order had been fabricated, meaning someone had deliberately used Camilla's authority to reach the seal chamber. Camilla opened her handbag, removed the household key from its chain, and placed it beside the register. She told Charles that if he no longer trusted her office, he should take everything, not merely the key. He did not reach for it immediately. The secretary who requested access could not be found, and the inquiry soon uncovered signs that the false command was aimed beyond the current reign. Camilla had surrendered the key, but the deeper question remained. Who possessed enough power to turn one false command into a threat against both Charles and William? The palace could survive embarrassment. It could survive family resentment. What it could not survive was uncertainty over which commands were genuinely issued by the sovereign. Charles now faced a brutal reality. Whoever controlled the seals could create confusion without ever appearing publicly. The emergency decree was therefore not simply an act of confidence in Catherine. It was a defensive wall built around the monarchy's most vulnerable source of authority. Charles sat alone before the final consultation, staring at an old photograph of himself with William and Catherine. Every possible choice carried pain. The sovereign power to reassign custody belonged to him alone, meaning advisors could suggest safeguards, but could not decide whom the monarch should trust. That burden mattered because the decree would survive the immediate crisis and shape how confidential authority passed into the next reign. William entered without staff and closed the door behind him. The prince told his father that Catherine must not be chosen simply because she was his wife. Charles answered that she was being chosen because she had repeatedly refused private advantage when duty demanded restraint. The king reminded him that she had rejected an unsigned instruction even when obeying it would have helped their household. That refusal had become proof of character. William understood the logic, but fear sharpened his voice. He warned that Catherine would be accused of gathering power before becoming queen. The future king asked whether Charles was protecting the monarchy by turning her into a target. He knew public admiration could quickly become suspicion when influence moved too close to the succession. Charles admitted the alternatives were worse. Appointing Camilla would appear self-protective after the breach touched her office. Appointing William would place too much confidential power in the direct heir. Choosing a court official would protect procedure but fail to restore trust inside the family. Catherine remained the only person who could bridge both reigns without appearing to control either one. Then Charles disclosed the decree's hidden strength. Its sealed annex, a confidential attachment kept apart from the public order, allowed Catherine to reject any instruction lacking two verified forms of authorization, even if it appeared to come from the king's private office. She would also maintain an independent record that neither the present household nor William's future court could alter. The decision was already taking effect when a message arrived from the missing secretary. It claimed the false command had never been designed to strengthen Camilla. It had been created to weaken Catherine before the next reign began. The warning arrived too late to stop the decree, yet early enough to reveal that Catherine's appointment had placed her directly in the path of the person who feared her most. By evening, the physical transfer had begun. Locked cases were removed, custody books were rewritten, and access codes were cancelled. Yet the most painful consequences were not administrative, they were human. Camila watched familiar officials enter her wing, carrying empty security boxes. William saw Catherine surrounded by responsibilities she had never sought, and Charles discovered that an emergency decision could protect the crown while quietly breaking the people nearest to it. Catherine received the main seal case during a small handover ceremony. The decree required every seal, impression register, historic warrant, and authentication ledger to move into a newly secured office under her direct control. An impression register was the official record used to compare and confirm genuine royal seals. Instead of allowing a formal photograph, she asked everyone to leave and checked each item herself against the custody list. Camila sat alone after the security team left her office. A pale square remained on the desk where the custody box had rested for years. She pressed her hand against the empty space, struggling to contain anger that felt too personal to name. The Queen Consort knew some senior staff saw the transfer as necessary protection, while others believed influence was already moving toward William and Catherine's future court. Charles came to her door but did not enter. He raised his hand to knock, hesitated, and lowered it again. The king had defended the crown, yet he could feel the decree creating a distance that authority alone could not repair. Camila heard his footsteps fade and understood that silence had become its own answer. Catherine later told William that she had inherited suspicion rather than authority. The prince reminded her that refusing the role would leave the seals vulnerable to the same people who had already misused them. He believed her acceptance might be the only barrier between private ambition and royal command, but he also saw how heavily that duty sat on her. Then Catherine found something that changed the crisis again. Inside the main case lay a sealed packet addressed to William, yet no entry for it appeared in the official register. She opened only the outer cover and discovered a private warning. The false precedence order had been a test. A second attempt had been planned around a future announcement involving the line of succession, the formal order deciding who would inherit the crown. Catherine refused to send the packet through officials. She carried it directly to William and asked that no advisors, courtiers, or even Charles join them. Behind a locked door, husband and wife would now decide whether the warning should be buried to protect the family or exposed to protect the crown. There were no officials in the room, no legal advisors, and no monarch to make the decision for them. Catherine placed the unregistered packet in front of William and told him exactly where she had found it. For the first time since the decree, the future king and queen were not reacting to Charles's choices. They were facing a choice of their own: preserve the family's remaining peace or reveal the threat completely. Catherine kept her hands away from the packet. Opening an unregistered item could damage evidence, yet ignoring it might leave the same hidden network inside the household. An unregistered packet was a sealed document missing from the official custody record, which meant no one could prove who placed it there. That gap mattered, because one secret paper could be used to divide the present king from the future one. William studied the seal, but refused to accept its warning without proof. The prince knew it might have been planted to turn him against Charles, Camila, or even his own wife. Catherine slid it across the table and asked whether he trusted her to act independently if her judgment one day opposed his wishes. William paused. He admitted that her new role frightened him, precisely because she had to be capable of challenging a future king, including him. The future monarch understood that authority without resistance could become dangerous. Catherine confessed that duty might isolate her from everyone she loved, but he promised that protecting the crown did not require dishonesty inside their marriage. Together, they made the choice that changed everything. Catherine logged the packet, preserved it as evidence, and carried it with William directly to Charles. They would not use it privately, hide it for advantage, or allow another secret to control the family. Charles ordered a documented forensic review. A hidden security mark connected the packet to the missing household secretary, proving the plan had been designed to manufacture distrust around Catherine and influence William before his reign began. The same review cleared Camila of ordering the false authorization. Her failure had been lending access under pressure, not conspiring against the succession. Catherine then asked Charles to place Camilla's exoneration inside the official inquiry. The king understood what that request meant. The new keeper would not use her authority to punish a rival, and the queen consort would not carry guilt that was not hers. Within hours, the palace prepared a controlled announcement, but no one could control what the country would see in Catherine's sudden rise. The family had finally identified the breach, but beyond the palace gates, Catherine's new title was about to become something larger than the crisis that created it. At sunrise, the decree left the guarded language of palace offices and entered the public imagination. To some, Catherine's appointment was the clearest sign yet that the monarchy was preparing for William's reign. To others, it exposed a household shaken by mistrust. But one image came to define the day: the Princess of Wales arriving at Windsor without celebration, carrying no visible symbol of victory, while hundreds gathered outside understood that power had shifted behind those walls. Catherine stepped into a storm she had never asked to create. The palace statement confirmed her appointment, but explained it only through continuity, security, and the integrity of sovereign authorization. Sovereign authorization meant the formal proof that an instruction truly came from the monarch. That careful wording protected the inquiry, yet it also invited the country to fill every silence with its own theory. A morning newspaper captured the mood first. Its front page showed Catherine beneath the words, "The Crown's Trust," while a smaller image of Charles signing the decree appeared under the line, "An emergency decision changes the palace." Commentators immediately divided. Some called it modernization. Others described it as crisis control. Many saw it as an unofficial step toward the future court of William and his wife. A broadcaster outside Buckingham Palace pushed the meaning even further. During a live report, he described the appointment as the moment Catherine ceased to be merely the future queen and became the guardian of the monarchy's word. That sentence spread faster than the official announcement because it gave the public a clear symbol: trust had moved. Catherine watched part of the coverage beside Sophie. The princess looked uncomfortable when presenters called her the day's victor. She quietly told the trusted confidant that no one should celebrate a duty created by broken trust. Sophie agreed, reminding her that restraint had earned the role and would now be needed to survive it. Camila saw the same front page and felt herself disappearing from the story. The queen consort had been formally cleared, yet she feared innocence would never carry the emotional force of Catherine's elevation. Charles understood that danger. He authorized a second statement confirming that no senior royal had directed the false authorization, protecting his wife's name without weakening the decree. The inquiry then removed the missing secretary from royal service after documented findings confirmed deliberate misuse of restricted access and an attempt to create conflict around the future succession. Charles now called Catherine, William, and Camilla into one final private meeting. The country had already delivered its judgment, but the emotional verdict that mattered most would be spoken behind closed doors by the four people the decree had changed forever. The final meeting was not called to reverse the decree. Charles had made that clear before anyone entered. It was called because authority had been secured, the breach had been exposed, and the family now had to decide whether the damage would harden into permanent division. Catherine arrived, carrying the seal register. Camilla came without the key she had surrendered. William stood beside neither woman, and the king began with the admission none of them expected. Charles declared that the decree would remain permanent. Catherine would continue as keeper of the seals because the monarchy required an independent custodian bridging the present reign and the one that would follow. The role meant guarding the records and instruments that proved a royal command was genuine. It gave her no control over family relationships, ceremonial rank, or Camilla's position as queen. This was protection, not personal power. Charles then turned to Camilla. He admitted that fear had entered their marriage before the inquiry was complete. The monarch did not apologize for defending the crown, but he apologized for leaving her alone beneath the shadow of guilt. She accepted that lending the key had been a failure of judgment, yet she refused to carry blame for another person's deception. The queen consort told Catherine that the seals must never again depend on affection, marriage, or assumption. Catherine answered with action. She placed the corrected inquiry beside Camilla, showing that her exoneration had been entered permanently into the official record. That gesture changed her first major decision. The new keeper had chosen fairness over rivalry, and the woman before her understood it. William then told Charles that the decree had not weakened the monarchy by exposing vulnerability. It had strengthened it by proving that even royal trust must be verified. The final inquiry confirmed an internal attempt to divide the family, damage Catherine, and influence the future king before his reign. The responsible secretary was dismissed, all compromised access was revoked, and no royal family member was implicated. Catherine now stood as guardian of the crown's authenticity, responsible for ensuring that authority could not be forged, borrowed, or manipulated. Charles had protected the institution. Camila had regained her name, though not the surrendered custody. William accepted restraint, and Catherine carried power without turning it into triumph. And when Catherine finally lifted the sovereign's seal case from the table, the crisis was over. Not because the family had escaped pain, but because the crown had chosen responsibility over secrecy, fairness over suspicion, and earned trust over inherited privilege. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.